Welcome back to another episode of From the Couch Sports. My name is Connor and I'm your host. If you enjoy the content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I got a few things I want to get into today, but to kick things off, I want to talk about the Baker Mayfield trade that just went down yesterday. So the Carolina Panthers traded a conditional fifth that could become a fourth round pick in 2023 for Baker Mayfield. And also part of this was, I think Baker Mayfield ended up taking a little bit of a pay cut, and the Browns are taking on some of his salary for this season, and then they're splitting part of that with the Carolina Panthers. So in all, I think this is a great trade for Carolina. They have a very good, talented team, a good defense. There is certainly some question marks about the team as well, such as the coach. There's some question marks about the reliability of the running back. But with that being said, Baker Mayfield coming over to Carolina, I think, is an immediate upgrade. I have been big on the whole Baker Mayfield is kind of being screwed over in this entire situation. I don't think the Browns should have gone out and gone after Deshaun Watson. Strictly speaking from a football standpoint, I get it. Deshaun Watson is probably the better quarterback. I mean, he's definitely the better quarterback when they're playing football. But with that being said, you can't just so quickly move on from the guy that's basically brought your franchise to life. Like, do we all forget the famous memes of the Browns? You had the old Tim Couch jersey, and on that jersey, they would tape on the new quarterback every single year. And you had like Johnny Manziel, Brandon Weeden, Colt McCoy, like just name after name after name that did not pan out. First round pick after first round pick. Just all busts basically. And, it never turned out correctly for Cleveland. And then this time, they go, I think they won a game maybe the year before when they drafted Myles Garrett. And then Baker Mayfield comes in. I think he came into a winless team, I believe. I could be wrong. It might have been the one-win team with him before he came on. But he comes on as a rookie on Hard Knocks. This is a guy who, has just worked his way up his entire career. Incredible story. He goes from being a walk-on to Texas A&M, or Texas Tech, I believe. Then transfers to Oklahoma, also as a walk-on, but becomes a Heisman winner, takes a team into the college football playoff, and ultimately it resulted in becoming the first overall pick. And then he doesn't even start the season. And this one kind of stung me a bit because I'm a Jets fan. In his rookie season, the first game that the Browns won, I want to say this is like dating back to 18, 19 games straight losses. So the beginning of the 2018 season and then the entire year, the year before, just all losses. They play the Jets, I want to say it was on a Thursday night game. And Baker Mayfield won the football game. And he brought in some life to Cleveland that they had not seen in over 20 years. He goes into Cleveland as a rookie, becomes the rookie passing touchdowns leader in NFL history. We know, of course, I think this was broken the next year by Justin Herbert, maybe the year after that. But nonetheless, crazy for him to set that record. And then, all of this is amidst the Cleveland Browns turmoil. Then we get the Hugh Jackson is fired in the middle of the season, and you get interim coach Freddie Kitchens, who's pretty much only been a running back coach and had some partial time as a coordinator in his career. But at the end of that year, they basically boost him into the head coach role for Baker Mayfield's second year, and it's a complete disaster. He shouldn't have been the head coach. It was just that simple. And despite that, Baker did have a down year in comparison to his rookie year. But then year 3 comes around. They get Kevin Stefanski. They get a good offensive-minded head coach. The run game's ticking. And Baker Mayfield has the year of his career. They go to the playoffs and they win a playoff game against a divisional rival. And then here we are, a year, pretty much a year and some change after that. And the Browns forgot what they had. Baker Mayfield plays pretty much the entire season with a hurt shoulder. I understand it wasn't the throwing arm, but it's something that definitely affects the way he plays football. And I want to say there are some other injuries as well on top of that he basically played through for the Cleveland Browns. This is the guy who's the heart and soul of your team that's brought your franchise to life. And you're going to forget about him after 1 year of being hurt. It's just crazy to me. And I'm not going to sit here and argue that Baker Mayfield is going to be a top 5 quarterback, because I really don't know. Baker Mayfield is, he's going to be in his 5th year now, I believe. 5th year, I think. 4th or 5th year. And like at the end of the day, he's had, so this is his 5th year, because he had 2 good years and then 2 kind of down years. And like we still haven't seen like the full potential of Baker Mayfield. Obviously we got a good idea what he has, what he can bring to the table. He's not Patrick Mahomes' arm talent, but he is a very talented quarterback. He's accurate, he makes good plays, and he's always going to win the underdog story. Every time that Baker Mayfield has been counted out in his life, he has stepped up to the plate and he's made big things happen. And I think he's going to do this again. And the crazy thing is, he's coming into a situation where he's going to be competing with the number 3 overall pick from that same draft class in Sam Darnold, another player, and I mean far less production than Baker Mayfield has had in his NFL career. I mean, it's not really even comparable. Sam Darnold, 3 years with the Jets, pretty much a disappointment. We can talk about the franchise dysfunction. I mean, they were very dysfunctional as well. They brought in Adam Gase in his 2nd year. So, like, he's another situation. Like, the situation that these players are drafted into can kind of dictate the results that they have as far as their careers go. And that's one of the reasons that it's so special that Baker Mayfield was able to do what he did with the Cleveland Browns organization. And I mean, now, like, we look at the Browns on paper and it's like, this is one of the most stacked teams in the NFL. But when he came onto this team, it was not like that. And he helped build this team into what they are. So for them to just throw him away for a conditional 5th round pick, it's pretty crazy to me. And part of me just kind of wants this to blow up in the Browns' face. Baker Mayfield is a good dude. None of this nonsense off the field stuff. He's a guy that brought life to an organization that had not had it in over 20 years. And now he's just been thrown to the dirt for, to be able to pay a guy with all these allegations that's sat out for a year of football, probably not going to play in 2022, paying him max dollars. And some of it I don't understand. Like, Cleveland is built to win right now, and maybe they can sustain that for the next couple years for Deshaun to come back and everything. But I wouldn't say that it would be impossible for Baker to have continued to win with Cleveland. Maybe not win a Super Bowl, but I think they could have kept going deep into the playoffs. And could Baker Mayfield fall into that Joe Flacco type QB that wins a Super Bowl with a really good team around him? I 100% believe that he can. I'm certainly rooting for him to come into Carolina and play great. I think he's going to take the job from Sam Darnold. I would be very surprised if he doesn't. I mean, Sam Darnold is basically the same quarterback today that he was in college. All of his, draft flaws that he brought into the NFL, a lot of those kind of carried over into the NFL. And part of that is, he just hasn't had a stable situation to be in to develop, the skill set that he does have. But, here we are. They're going to be competing for this. The reality is, one of those guys, although they're both good humans and everything, one of them is likely going to become a backup at this point in their career. And honestly, I mean, either one of them I think would be one of the top backups in football. They're both guys that, like, fringe starters. I mean, as far as Darnold goes, I think Baker is kind of a middle of the pack type quarterback. Could he see some of that Jimmy Garoppolo type success on the right in the right situation? I think so. I'm definitely looking forward to see what he can bring to Carolina. I like the move for them. It's crazy that they have two like top three picks really from the same draft class. But moving on, some NBA stuff. Kind of crazy. We haven't seen like a whole lot of movement when it comes to the free agency market. Some of the biggest names on the market are still available and have yet to re-sign or, to sign anywhere elsewhere. DeAndre Ayton, a lot of people like pre-draft were talking like this was a set in stone deal that he's not going to go to the Suns, probably be in a sign and trade, or go sign somewhere and see if the Suns match the offer. And that hasn't happened yet. I think that the Kevin Durant news might have been kind of throwing some things off with that. But some other names like Colin Sexton has yet to sign or re-sign. And then I think this one is expected, but James Harden still hasn't signed a deal. Most people think that he's just going to go back to Philly. Well, I think which is ultimately probably what will happen. But nonetheless, former MVP, one of the best scorers in basketball. Obviously, he hasn't been as great as of late, but still excellent player, and he's still technically a free agent. But as far as the moves that have been made, I would say the two biggest, and it's funny because the free agency market isn't what it used to be in like 2010. Like, I mean, we saw LeBron James become a free agent. Even a couple years back, Kevin Durant. It seems like these last couple years, a lot of players are getting extended because of the type of contracts that they can sign with these teams. So the biggest signings, I would say, is John Wall to the Clippers. He signed on a 2-year deal. Now, John Wall was in Houston last year, and he didn't really want to be a part of the rebuild. So he didn't really play at all. And now, so he's coming off of basically a year sitting out. The year previous to this, I think he played 40 or 60 games, somewhere in that range. But he averaged 20 a game, 7 assists. And so, he still proved he can be that guy coming off of the torn Achilles, which had also sat him out previous to that. But now he's coming to a team that could really use a point guard of his skill set. You got Kawhi Leonard, you got Paul George, you got two superstars as is. You're not going to need John Wall to be the guy. If he comes on and he's the third option, putting up close to 20 a game, 7 assists, even anywhere close to his previous season's numbers, that's going to be really good for the Clippers, and they're going to be a team that's ultimately going to be competing for a ring at the end of the season if they can stay healthy. Because that's kind of been the story of the Clippers since Kawhi came over to the Clippers. In San Antonio, he had some injury issues. They did kind of started the load management, it felt like. And then he goes to Toronto, and it just works out perfectly to where he's completely healthy for the playoffs, goes on this magical championship run, wins a ring, and then he goes to the Clippers. And really since then, he hasn't been able to stay on the court. And then Paul George, too. Paul George has been kind of wishy-washy as far as his health goes. But I think if you put it all together, if these guys can actually stay healthy, or at the minimum, if you can get them healthy towards the end of the season and they're healthy enough to keep you in the playoffs, then you got a team that can really compete to win it all at the end of the season. So I really do like that move for John Wall, but also for the Clippers. I think that's a big upgrade at point guard. I think they still have Reggie Jackson. I mean, him coming off the bench would be incredible. But he's a good point guard as well. But John Wall, former number 1 overall pick, decorated career, and I still think he's got a lot to give to a team. So I'm really excited for that move. And then a big move, one of the biggest signings at least, Jalen Brunson signing a $104 million 4-year deal with the New York Knicks. And this was funny because, I'm pretty sure they're being investigated for tampering. Because literally before the NBA drafts, well before free agency even started, the Knicks were making moves, and the report was they're making moves to offer Jalen Brunson a big contract. Free agency hits, and he's already basically signed the contract. Like, did they even have time to like run the numbers by you or anything? Like, this was already kind of set in stone. It felt like, but I do think that he gives them a fun young core. He's a very good player, and like definitely got kind of overshadowed by Luka. And it would have been nice for the Mavs to retain him last year, because his value really went up. I think he's going to average around $26 million per season on this new contract with the Knicks. But he's going to be thrust into a young team that's kind of trying to develop and make that next jump. In 2021 they were a playoff team, and people were kind of jumping back on the Knicks bandwagon. And then last year they kind of fell off. The whole Kemba Walker situation, the rumors that they were going to trade Julius Randle, which hasn't happened just yet. But I think this is going to be a good move for the Knicks. They've been needing a point guard for a really long time, even before this like current situation that they have going on. Like, if you look back 10 years ago even, it felt like the Knicks could use a point guard. So that was a big deal for the Knicks. And then this is like, another, really valuable player signing is a PJ Tucker to the 76ers, 3-year, $33 million deal. PJ Tucker brings a lot into the locker room, kind of as like one of the player type coach leaders on the team. But he also provides great defender, good on the glass, and he's going to hit a lot of open 3-pointers. He's like, you don't think of him as like the best shooter by any means, but if you got a corner 3, PJ Tucker seems to be draining those more often than not. So I do like that move for the Sixers. Obviously, as a Heat fan, that kind of stings. Funny thing, if you're big on Instagram or anything like that, PJ Tucker posts like his "Thank You Miami" type post on Instagram, and Jimmy Butler's kind of response is like, what, F you and Joel Embiid. Like, just super funny response to it. But I love to see that out of Jimmy Butler. Right now, it doesn't seem like the Heat have made any big moves. I don't know if they're trying to land a big fish via trade. But time will tell with that kind of thing. I think we still have a lot of NBA offseason to go. And I want to talk about the kind of 2 big NBA trades that happened this last week and a half. So one of them was Dejounte Murray going from the Spurs to the Atlanta Hawks. And this trade was Dejounte Murray and Landale to the Hawks for Danilo Gallinari, 3 first-round picks, and a pick swap. Gallinari, I think, is getting waived. I'm pretty sure he already signed with the Celtics as well. So he's kind of a throwaway piece in that because he's not even going to go to the Spurs. But, initially looking at this, and I'm going to make one thing clear, like, I don't want to come on here and make draft grades or, grading this trade, because ultimately, like, without seeing the players play together, what kind of chemistry they have, how do they fit together on the court, you can't make a grades. You can't say anything just yet. Like, I can give you like my take and my opinion on as far as what I think will happen and how I think the fit will go. But ultimately, if I'm going to come out here and say, oh, this is an A grade, oh, this is a B grade, this is a C grade, like, you're going to set yourself up to just look like an idiot, because a lot of times those grades do not pan out how you expected. And with the Dejounte Murray trade, but also most notably with the Rudy Gobert trade, these are trades like we really do not know how these pieces are going to fit together until we see them. And like, it's funny because Atlanta kind of had an off year, and everybody's just kind of writing them out. Like, why the hell did they trade all these picks for Murray? Like, why not do something else? And the thing is, it seems like people are just so quick to forget. The team was in the Eastern Conference Finals just a year ago in 2021. So, if you added Dejounte Murray to that team, they might have been able to, maybe not necessarily won, but for sure have been able to go farther, maybe taking another game from the Bucks. Like, it's just funny because people are talking about this Hawks team like they're going to be picking top 5 for the next 10 years, which in reality probably won't be the case. Like Trae Young is emerging into one of the best point guards in basketball. He's really developing. He's still young. Got a lot ways to go as far as his prime and everything goes. And then Dejounte Murray is just elevating each year in his career. He's just taking that next step. So this last season, going from 2020 where he averaged 15 points per game, this last season he averaged 21 points per game, 8.3 rebounds, and 9.2 assists. So he is like very close to averaging a triple-double, and that provides a lot for the Hawks. Give you another guy that you can keep the ball in his hands. It doesn't have to run through Trae 100% of the time as it is now. Trae's going to be able to come off screens, get more wide open looks. And Dejounte Murray is just still developing as an NBA player. Like, who knows the limit to how good he will be in the NBA. So I really do like this pairing in the backcourt for the Atlanta Hawks. I think this can, they should for sure be a playoff team going forward. Is this going to be the move that puts them over the top and wins them a championship? I wouldn't say so. I don't believe so right now. But like I said, this is something that we need to see what they look like on the court together. Like if Trae Young develops into a top 3 point guard, and then you got Dejounte Murray taking the next step even from last year, it's going to be a very dangerous team. And their skills complement each other very well. Dejounte Murray is going to give you a lot more of the rebounding, defensive aspect of things. They're both very good passers. Murray's, developing his jump shot. Trae Young can shoot the hell out of the ball. I really do like this fit together. And I'm curious to see where things go. I do not buy the whole this was a bad trade stuff that we hear from the media and whatnot. I do like this trade looking at it. And then the other big trade, Rudy Gobert to the Minnesota Timberwolves. This was kind of a packed trade. The T-Wolves gave up a ton of assets to get Gobert. So the Jazz ended up getting Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverley, Leandro Bolmaro, Walker Kessler, who is their rookie that they just drafted, 4 first-round picks, and a pick swap. And the Minnesota Timberwolves just got Rudy Gobert. And so initially, I'm curious. I really don't know how this fit is going to work. I think it can, but it's very interesting to me because I never really looked at Cat as a guy who should be playing the 4 and just that he doesn't have a 5 on his team at the moment. You always saw that with Anthony Davis. It was he might be better fit as a power forward versus a center. And when he came over to the Lakers, that seemed to be what he wanted to do with Dwight Howard at the center position. I never really got that impression from Karl Anthony Towns. But now that you got Rudy Gobert, you kind of have to make that work. But I mean, you got the Twin Towers essentially. You got two, I think they're both close to 7 feet, 6'10", 6'11". Rudy Gobert has the defensive accolades, one of the best defensive centers in basketball. And then Karl Anthony Towns, he can stretch the court. He can shoot really well. He's got one of the best offensive games in basketball. So in a sense, their skill set does complement each other as well. With the way that the modern NBA is, a lot of small ball being played, a lot of smaller centers, more athletic guys being on the court. I am curious to see how will that pan out. You do have 2 guys that aren't necessarily the most athletic big men. But also, offensively, you're going to have two pretty much 7-footers in the paint, in the post. You're going to get what Rudy Gobert provides off the glass as a defender, great in the pick and roll and, lob guy. And then you're going to get, offense. Karl Anthony Towns can go for 50 any night. But in my opinion, and it's funny to say this because, I don't think that necessarily Karl Anthony Towns or Rudy Gobert are the keys to whether or not this Minnesota Timberwolves thing is going to work. I think the development of Anthony Edwards may play a bigger role in this. A lot of people talk about Anthony Edwards as if he can emerge into becoming an MVP level caliber player. And if that becomes the case, then, You've got an MVP type player in Anthony Edwards. You've got a big man who's a former defensive player of the year, one of the best defenders in Rudy Gobert. And then you also have another big man in Karl Anthony Towns that's one of the best offensive big men in basketball. So you mix that, they still have D'Angelo Russell, what other pieces they build around them. Like, that could be dangerous. But it's all going to, how's it going to look on the court? Because, when I first heard about this trade, I thought, like, what happens when they play a team like the Warriors? Are they just going to get ran off the court? A team that's just going to run and shoot the ball a lot. But then on the flip side, you can say, well, T-Wolves could slow the game down a little bit, feed the post, play a more traditional basketball. And that, I don't think that that's completely dead in today's NBA. I do think that sports go through kind of phases. Like, when we talk about football, maybe you could say like the fullback position's kind of dead, but like the run game, we go through phases where like it's completely pass heavy. Everybody is trying to air the ball out, and then you get a team with like a Derrick Henry that can just run down the middle on everybody's throats, and they're that more traditional classic team. So we could see a similar thing in the NBA. I do know like a lot of the NBA has moved to this more analytical 3-point shooting, style. And I get that. But they could, kind of slow the ball down, and, bring it back to a more traditional sense with two bigs. And, the other thing too is with Anthony Edwards developing and everything, like, you don't expect the Timberwolves, if you're the Timberwolves, you don't expect to be picking top 5 anytime soon. So in that sense, do those four first round picks in the pick swap matter as much as getting a potential all-star that can help put you over the top if that's what you see in Rudy Gobert? I don't think so. I think that the picks don't matter in that case. And then if you look at the rest of the players, like, Malik Beasley is a good wing, kind of a 3-and-D guy, but he's not like that piece that's going to put you over the top. Patrick Beverley is a great 6-man bench defender, but also like they're not Rudy Gobert. So I do like the move for the Timberwolves, bringing in Rudy Gobert, but also, like I said, there is certainly some criticism due there, and it's going to be one of those things. We will not know how this trade worked out until a couple years down the line from now. But then that does bring me to kind of my last big trade, and then we'll talk about a couple other brief things in the NBA. Malcolm Brogdon was traded to the Celtics for Daniel Theis, Aaron Nesmith, Nick Stauskas, Malik Fitz, Juwan Morgan, and a 2023 first-round pick. So the Celtics basically, and I could be off on this, because I know Theis has played a decent amount, but like I don't remember any of these guys really getting any serious minutes in the playoffs. You had Malcolm Brogdon, who for sure would have gotten serious minutes if he was on that team. So now you got Brogdon, Marcus Smart. They also added Danilo Gallinari, who's going to be coming off the bench. So like this Celtics team is reloaded. They were in the finals last year and like could have very well won with a couple different changes. Do I think that this change puts them over the top and would have been the difference in the Celtics winning the championship? Not necessarily, but Malcolm Brogdon is a very good player, and I think he makes the Celtics even better than they were last year. And if they were in the finals last year, this could put them, in the finals again, and then maybe making another run, depending on how things shake out. Obviously, looking forward a year from now, like the playoffs is just, it's always going to be a question mark. There's going to be a lot of health that comes into it and things like that. So time will tell. And then I do want to kind of briefly touch on the Kevin Durant kind of saga. So in 2016, Kevin Durant goes to the Warriors, spends 4 years with the Warriors. They win in the 2016-2017. They won 2017-2018. And then they also made it in 2019, I believe. Oh, so maybe he only spent three years there. But the last year he tears his Achilles, and then he teams up with Kyrie with the Nets. And then just ever since then, really, it's been kind of crazy. Kevin Durant looked phenomenal last year. Some of the best basketball he played in his entire career in the playoffs. He was literally like an inch or two away from making the Eastern Conference Finals, I believe, or might have even been the champ. No, I think it was it was the conference finals to play the Hawks. But he was that close. And then this year, he had the whole Kyrie Irving thing. Crazy Nets rules that a player that didn't have the shot that plays on a different team could come into Brooklyn and play in Brooklyn Stadium, but their own player couldn't. And so Kyrie stood firm on his beliefs with this. And frankly, it's just kind of damaged his reputation. He's seen around the league, and a lot of people have talked about him as a guy that doesn't necessarily care about basketball, all because of something he didn't want to put into his body, which I think is kind of crazy. Like, I think you stand up for your beliefs no matter what they are. I mean, at the end of the day, this was a career. If your employer goes to force you to do something, that's not cool. I don't think that's cool in any sense. But Kyrie, he went through this whole situation, and when he finally got back to the court, he was balling. I think he had a 50-point game. Seemed like every time he was playing, he was having great games. And then they traded for Ben Simmons, and it was like, okay, I know that they're a low seed. I think they were the 7 or 8 seed. They were the 7 seed because they played the Celtics. But it was like, if Ben Simmons is actually plays to his potential, this team could still potentially win it all. And then, Kyrie opts in, which, on paper looks like he's coming back to the Nets. But then Kevin Durant opts out, basically saying that he wants to be traded. So it's like, they got half a year out of the whole core together. Like, just a whole lot of moving pieces there. And now the Nets are wanting some absurd stuff for Kevin Durant. Like, reportedly, they asked the T-Wolves for Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, 5 first-round picks. Like, just give us partial ownership of your team. That's what we want in a Kevin Durant trade. Every first-round pick until you die, essentially. Like, just crazy. They just demanding crazy stuff. And I understand that, for them making some of these moves to try to win, they have given up all of their future assets. So if they lose Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving for nothing, they're likely going to be picking at the top of the draft every year and not picking with their pick because someone else would be drafted. So I understand that. And I don't believe that Kevin Durant has a no trade clause. I've seen a lot. I have seen people like in the media say that he does have that. But then you see the reports that Bradley Beal is the only one with a no-trade clause. So I really don't understand that. I think that there's a good chance that Kevin Durant does go to a team that he wants to play for. Like, he's got a list of a few teams, and most of those teams actually have a lot of capital to move. But there's certainly difficulty to making this happen. Obviously, the Nets want the biggest trade return pretty much ever. Like, I think that this is probably going to rival, like, the Carmelo trade from 2010, the Anthony Davis trade, like, those kind of huge trades for a player that's, top 5 or close to top 5. I mean, I think KD is, but you could make an argument against the other two guys that I mentioned. So, that's interesting. And then there's a couple other, like, difficult things to work contract-wise. So, basically, like, Ben Simmons is on a rookie extension contract, which means the Nets can only have one player like that on their team. So they can't go and get a guy like Bam Adebayo who's on a similar contract and bring him in. And then I think there's some difficulty with the hard cap space as well. So most likely and I don't know how quickly this is going to happen. It could happen in the next day. It could happen before this video is posted. Or we could be waiting a couple weeks. But most likely the Nets are going to have to find a third, maybe even fourth trade partner to make this all work together, where the Nets get all the players, the picks that they want, and then other players move around. Like a team like the Heat, for example, maybe they include Bam Adebayo in the trade, but maybe Adebayo goes to a different team, and that team ends up giving another asset to the Nets. So a trade like that. The Suns have a lot of assets. We even talked like the DeAndre Ayton thing. He could go somewhere else as well. So that's going to be really interesting to monitor here in the coming days and weeks. And then, and we'll cover this a little bit more. Summer League's kind of kicked off. There's a couple different ways to be when you're like watching Summer League. Obviously, like people get super excited for Summer League basketball. And there have been some fun moments in the past from players that turn out to be very good in the NBA. There's also been some moments in the Summer League where a player that doesn't pan out in the NBA has a great performance. So I'm not going to, overhype anything in the Summer League that I see. But on the same token, like great basketball players, they usually play great in the Summer League and then it transitions to the NBA. So, we'll see how all that plays out. Chet Holmgren had a really good first game. I think he put up like 20-something points, 6 blocks, which apparently is a Summer League record. So he's a player I'm interested to see how his career is going to progress. Keegan Murray for the Kings, he actually had a really good Summer League debut as well. So a lot of fun stuff to tune in for. Basketball season isn't completely dead just yet. But that does bring me to the final topic of this video. Is going to be the UFC this weekend. So kind of kicking off with the prelims. And what I like to do with these videos, I'm not going to talk on every single fight. I'm going to talk about the fights that I'm curious to see, the fighters that I'm interested to watch the most, that I've also seen a lot of their fights. And, I pretty much watch all of the prelims all the way down to the main event. So I've seen a lot of these guys fight before. I like to talk about my, fights I'm looking forward to, and then we usually do a recap video where we'll cover, the best fights of the night, those kind of things. But on the prelims, David Onama is a featherweight. He's going to fight against Garrett Armfeld. And Onama, I think, fought at 155 in his first fight in the UFC, lost. But then when he went back to 145, he had a big win. So I'm excited to see him fight again. And then Cody Brundage versus Tresean Gore. Tresean Gore was a Ultimate Fighter. He was in the last season of the Ultimate Fighter. Interesting story there. But and this is by no means a knock to Tresean Gore, but what is the point of the Ultimate Fighter at this point? Because if you fight on the Contender Series and you get a good win, you get a contract in the UFC, and if you're even any entertaining at all, and you're and you're on the Ultimate Fighter, you're almost guaranteed to fight in the UFC. From that season, there's already been like Andre Petroski. He's fought multiple times in the UFC. Brian Battle, the winner, I don't even know if he's fought again. I know he did fight Tresean Gore, I believe. But he won. Tresean Gore's fought a couple times. They even brought name's drawing a blank on me right now. His name is Michael. I forgot his last name. But he was like a fill-in on the Ultimate Fighter. And then they even brought him in for a UFC event. So it was what are they doing? They're the whole point back in the day used to be you go through this grueling journey, fighting, living in a house with these guys, no social media, no phones, no nothing. And then the outcome is the winner gets a contract with the UFC. And I know that contract is probably much bigger than the other contracts these guys are signing, but it kind of just defeats the whole purpose of it. Why even have it anymore? Unless you're going to make it an entertaining spectacle. And this last season, we had Amanda Nunes. I don't think many people tuned in for that season. Juliana Pena and Amanda Nunes as the coaches for the Ultimate Fighter. I don't mean that any disrespectful or anything. It's just that's not the type of Ultimate Fighter that's going to sell a lot of pay-per-views for their next fight by any means, or draw people into watching the Ultimate Fighter at all. But speaking of the Ultimate Fighter, Ricky Turcios, the guy who won at 135, is finally making his UFC debut outside of, the Ultimate Fighter finale. He's fighting Arman Zahabi. So, obviously I'm really looking forward to seeing him actually get to fight some of these Ultimate Fighter guys. And I guess that is one cool thing about the tournament, like the way that the Ultimate Fighter goes, a lot of these guys go on to have very good UFC careers. Some of them have even become UFC champions. So I'm not trying to completely downplay it. But you know, that's kind of my take on it as of now. And then the main card, just a couple fights I want to talk about. Caio Borralho versus Armen Petrosyan. This is two really good middleweight prospects. They're 185ers. Very good strikers, the both of them. So I'm really excited to see how this fight plays out. And then the main card, the main event, is Rafael dos Santos versus Rafael Fiziev. The battle of the Rafaels. They also have like kind of a different skill set. Fiziev is like incredible Muay Thai fighter. You've seen the videos online this week of like people trying to head kick him and he's just completely ducking back, and you know, it looks like he's in the Matrix almost, like crazy. And then in his fights, like he has the knockout he had over Brad Riddell, like I think it was a spinning heel kick. Just incredible stand-up fighter. RDA has crazy stone hands. If he lands big on you, he can knock you out cold. But also he's got a dominant wrestling and good jiu-jitsu. So we're going to see kind of a clash of styles in this main event. We're going to see is Fiziev's grappling defense, and then how are the exchanges going to look on the feet. I would say Fiziev probably is going to have a little bit of an advantage as far as speed and striking goes on the feet. But RDA is a vet. He's fought the who's in the UFC. He's fought at welterweight, at 155. He's a former champion. Like, if anybody is prepared for something like this, it's definitely RDA. So I'm really excited for this main event. This is just a free card on ESPN Plus. It's a UFC Vegas event, I believe. So it's just, they're gonna have, you know, few fans in the crowd, nothing crazy. But it should be a fun fight card to tune in for. But that kind of wraps up everything. I know it's been a little bit of a delay with making of videos and putting them out. We've had a lot of stuff going on. Had a career change in my personal life, and just things like that have kind of delayed me from making this. But going forward, these videos should be coming out one to two per week at the minimum. And you know, as always, let me know what your thoughts are on all the topics we covered. You know, give me some feedback. If you enjoy the content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And as always, thanks for tuning in.